everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Dad. It is another Dad Chat with your dads. It's Nate. It's Francis. Nate, how you doing today?
I'm all right. It's cooled off a little because it's rainy today. It's been really hot here. I got back from the UK on Monday night. And the funny thing is, it's much hotter here than there. But when I went up, it was the same temperature. So I got to have like a 1-to-1 comparison of what, let's say 92 is about 33 Celsius. When I got to London, it was the same temperature in Geneva. And I'll be honest with you, that feels hotter in London than here for a variety of reasons, but mostly because like there's not as much shade in the area of London where I was. Everything is just brick, so it's like a big pizza oven, and nothing is insulated. So even places that have AC still feel hot, and most places don't have AC. I mean, they are starting to insulate more. You see it in construction, but it's not very common there. And I've said it before and I've said it again, but it's very, very funny because Brits will always be like, oh, our houses are built to trap in heat. They're not like other people's houses. That's why our houses get so hot in the summer. It's like, well, every human shelter is built to trap heat throughout all of human history, but yours managed to somehow trap in cold in the winter as well as heat in the summer because they're fucking drafty as shit and aren't insulated. If you have an insulated house, it's not like it turns it into a big puffy coat on your house. You also, at night, for example, when it cools off, you open the windows, you put a fan up, get some cool air in. If your home is insulated, it also protects during the day from all of that hot air outside getting in. That's why you close the windows. If you're in the sun, there's some places where you can leave them open a bit. So I experienced that again, but then the heat did break and I got back down here and it's hotter than shit, but it's tolerable in our home. It's
been gross all over America. Like I work with people like up in Michigan and a lot of people on the East Coast, and they're all dealing with the same thing. Like I was surprised. We actually had spring this year. We don't normally have spring. We have like 2 weeks of like some spring-like weather, and then it's just hot as balls.
Because I can remember being on FTXs when I was an ROTC cadet in like mid-April and coming back like cold and windburned from being out. And then like 2 weeks later, it's in the 90s. Like, you don't really get a lot of gentle transition in the Midwest.
We don't. Actually, when I spent 3 weeks on Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, and within that 3 weeks, we had hot weather and cold weather injuries. From sleeping outside. Hot weather injuries because somebody was sleeping in a tent during the day that didn't have air conditioning. So the guy ended up passing out while asleep because he was working the night shift. That was not great. But also, it would get down to, just above freezing. And people were like, well, it's the summer. What do I need, cold weather gear? And thankfully, I was that soldier who's just like, no, you take everything. Because God knows what Wisconsin's going to fucking throw at you.
This happened to us when I was a cadet. I think I told you the story before that when I went to the sort of cadet basic camp that you do between your junior and senior year, it was at Fort Lewis, Washington, and we had your garden variety Washington summer weather where like I remember the day of us doing like one of the courses where you had to like throw grenades, not real ones, but it was like a simulated thing, and there were all these like little mini tactical lanes. It was in the 90s. Like I don't want to over exaggerate here, but let's say it was in the low 90s and felt like pretty high humidity, but maybe not that bad. But then we went to the field with the summer packing list, like because it was August, and all we brought was a poncho liner and a bivouac bag. So like the Gore-Tex shell and the poncho liner, but no sleeping bags. And it got down to 39 at night, which for our European metric listeners, that's like 4. So it was like comfortable temperature of what you'd keep your refrigerator set to at night. But then like maybe a week and a half prior, it had been 32, 33 during the daytime. And also it's almost as far north as London. So very long days, very bright sun. And we were in long sleeves, long trousers, long sleeve jackets because we were in fatigues. So yeah, it sucked. This show that I did for Trash Future on Saturday, brother, there were like 250, 300 people in that room. It was like a concrete bunker. It was upstairs, but like had ventilation, but not very much. It didn't have any like active ventilation, but like, it had doors open, space open, etc. It felt cool, like a basement when we got in. By the end of the show, I would estimate it was probably, if you had told me it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit in there and about 100% humidity, I would have believed you. Yeah, like we did a solid 60 minutes and I was like, if we did 75 minutes, I might literally be a heat casualty. Like Riley had to take his glasses off because he just couldn't keep them clear of fog. Like it was fucking insufferable. The Lion show didn't have as many people, and also it had cooled off the next day, so it was fine. I mean, like, the stage lights made it a little warm, but I was able to wear jeans comfortably, whereas like I normally wouldn't wear shorts to perform in, but like, nah, fuck no, I wore a t-shirt and shorts. I was I mean, like, the core, like the little green room hallway that we had did not feel comfortable when we got in. It felt pretty warm, and then stepping in there after the show, it felt like God's air conditioning. Like, it was so, because it's just so goddamn hot.
Put a bunch of podcast fans in a concrete bunker and see what happens. It's gonna get humid.
We get quite a few young people, like people who I wouldn't expect to be TF fans. Like, they seemed too young and vibrant. So it was great. Actually, it was a nice mixture. Had a good show.
Can't imagine a young person listening to a podcast. It just seems like our like.
Well, they like podcasts that are actually video shows, but called podcasts, because apparently a podcast is guys talking on video into SM7Bs. That's every podcast that's promoted on YouTube, because that's sort of the Joe Rogan Experience standard.
Yeah, I don't understand the concept of wanting to watch two people talk. Like,
oh, me neither, man. I find it insanely boring.
I want to put it in my ears and walk around or something.
And I wouldn't want to do it anyway. But the problem is, for promoting stuff, like, you're kind of gamed against by all of the various social networks, because it kind of privileges video content over audio content only, or like static images. And so, like, but also some of it, I think, is just, your garden variety influencer thing. Like, if you think about the sort of, because like the podcasting industry would look at something like JRE as a massive success and a thing to emulate, whereas you and I and everyone we know doing this work are like, oh, that's the show that the morons go on to say the dumbest shit anyone's ever fucking said in human history. But if you look at that as like people who want to increase their profile, especially like, entertainers who want to be seen as hot and smart and interesting and funny, like, obviously video is part of that. Whereas for us, the kind of, call it the podcasters who got to a certain level of prominence, however you want to define that, where Twitter was kind of the mechanism of promotion. We did video promos so people would share them, and like, we do subtitles, but it didn't have to be us on them. And quite frankly, we all benefited from not being seen on video. Very much so. Because we are all
6 o'clock in the morning for me. I am not. I'm not camera ready.
I mean, I'm sitting in our spare room that is even fuller with shit now because we had to move some stuff out. So, I mean, I have about 6 weeks before I have to travel again. So I've got some leads on who I need to call, like, for example, for the local authority to pick up like bulky stuff that we've got in the basement storage and don't need anymore. And once I do that, I can start moving some stuff in here down there, and in general, like, get a little more organized.
I guess it makes sense. Where do people get their news from but a bunch of like talking heads on the TV box, So I guess people are just used to watching people tell them things instead of just listening to it. I don't know. I don't get it. I'm always doing other things while I'm podcasting.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't listen to podcasts that much for entertainment unless it's like people that I find interesting or a topic I find interesting, but I do get the full suite. Like, I recently listened to a show about like the sort of life and times of Old Dirty Bastard, but it was researched by a guy who's a filmmaker, but who's also a 5%er. So it's not like evangelizing.
What's a 5%er? I know what a 1%er and a 3%er is. What's a 5%er?
Completely different.
Okay, good.
So the best way I can describe 5%ers is it is a kind of syncretistic offshoot of the Nation of Islam. It is a black liberation sort of form of, it's not really Islam, but it's like the Nation of Islam, also known as the Nations of the Gods and the Earths. Every classic rap act you can think of has some influence from it, because it was huge as kind of like you had the Black Panthers and you had the Nation of Islam, and then the FBI basically killed everyone they could. And so there was a lot of kind of scattering in these things. I'm definitely not the person to talk about it, being a white man. I got to be real with you, but if you're interested in this stuff,
it's a black liberation.
It is, but it also believes like there's a lot of, when I say syncretistic, like it mixes a lot of things from other religions. There's some crossover with what you would call the Black Israelites, but it's not that. Basically, understanding it is a religion, it kind of like a spiritual movement that posits the idea that the black man is God and the black woman is God. and that basically, or that black man is God and the black woman is earth. And the reason I bring it up is more that you will hear so much. If you know anything about it, you'll realize from like 90s East Coast hip hop, there's stuff all over. And in particular, Wu-Tang were like very much steeped in that.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to go through the Eazy-E discography.
No, you're not gonna find it on. You're probably not gonna find it on West Coast stuff. But
I wasn't listening to the intellectual hip hop artists.
It's not intellectual hip hop, man. I mean, we're talking about stuff
I know, but we're talking Wu-Tang is a little bit, I would say, a little bit more politically connected than Eazy-E ever was. I don't know. Again, two guys who probably can't go deep into this.
I have listened to a lot of Wu-Tang, and I can tell you that, like, yes, no, maybe. Like, Wu-Tang is hard to classify. I absolutely would not call it conscious rap by any means. I mean, in the sense that, like, you have some things that might fit that category, but then you also have songs like Dog Shit. I would say if you look at a lot of the stuff, Nas had some of it in the early days, Wu-Tang absolutely, but like all of the Wu-Tang offshoot things, so like Only Built for Cuban Links, there's the first Raekwon album, the first Ghostface Killer album, the first Jizz album, Liquid Swords, it's all over it. And I was just interested because I didn't know the story about ODB saving the little girl after she got run over by a car in Brooklyn. And so famously ODB interrupted, he rushed the stage at the Grammys. And, when Wu-Tang didn't win Best Rap Album for Wu-Tang Forever, that's where the line Wu-Tang is for the children comes from. And this made him kind of the object of derision. But what I didn't realize was, like the day before the Grammys ceremony, he was at a studio or outside a studio in Brooklyn, and a little girl was getting out of a car with her mom, and she stepped into traffic and got hit by like a Ford Ranger, a Ford Explorer, and was pinned under the car. And he basically came out and more or less got everyone to, like, all the dudes around it to lift the car up and get the girl out, and then visited her in the hospital afterwards. And I was like, that's insane. I've never heard this.
Not something you would expect out of an old dirty bastard.
Well, I mean, you learn a lot about him in this podcast. Yeah. It's called A Son Unique, and it's on Apple Podcasts, wherever it's distributed. And it's nice in the sense that it does have ads, but it's ads for their own shows within their sort of like, syndicate or whatever, and not just like ads for, ivermectin, dick pills, and whatever, Trump coin, Iraqi dinars. But we're talking about podcasts. Like, I listen to that. I listen to Bunta Vista. I listen to, like, I love niche history podcasts periodically, but I think I've said this before, in my spare time, I almost always listen to music.
Yeah.
Almost always. And so for me, listening to a podcast requires a kind of attention that I'm not always in a position to give, whereas music, I can absolutely do stuff in the background.
Yeah, you can tune music out. It's just the thing that's kind of filling in the silence in the background. But like a podcast, you got to listen to. There's a story. There's people are talking. You got to keep tuned into it.
Oh, I even taught myself. I used to not be able to do this, but I would have these long rides on the Seoul Metro to get from Camp Casey down to like Seoul to like anything I was doing or seeing friends, or when I was taking Korean lessons. And I back in, I was like, I refused to combine all of my devices into one. I had my phone, I had my iPod, and I had my Kindle, and I would put on an album on my iPod and actually read books on my Kindle. And for the longest time I couldn't, but I eventually got to the point where actually now it has to be certain kinds of music, but I can actually read while listening to music, which is nice.
Sure.
I mean, like Your Garden Variety, My Bloody Valentine albums work pretty well for that. Stuff that requires more attention, maybe not.
Yeah. So Nate, I was back in your neck of the woods this past weekend. We drove to Louisville, Kentucky, which meant we had to pass through southern Indiana. So some more places in Indiana we visited. Have you ever been to Santa Claus, Indiana?
I know about Holiday World, and I've been to Santa Claus passing through to go to Paoli, but I've never spent time there.
Yeah. Holiday World has the unique distinction of being the one theme park in America that did not have a mask mandate during COVID, because they're privately owned. They're not part of a conglomerate. So like all the conglomerates are like, no, if you're part of our conglomerate, you've got to have the mask mandates. But Holiday World never did. Seems like a pretty decent place though. We didn't stop because it was hot as fuck there, but we did stop off in Santa Claus for lunch, and I discovered that there's a monastic abbey out there, like the Arch Abbey of Meinred.
I don't know anything about it, but I know that there's some interesting things down there that you'll find. I mean, obviously, like French Lick, all of the like thermal springs.
All the very French, a lot of French names down there.
Well, no, but there's a place called French Lick that was famous in like the 20s and 30s because in the sort of pre-air conditioning era as the thermal springs down there. And so they had like spas and stuff, and they have a lot of very strange design. They have kind of like Moorish revival architecture, which is very odd to see in them. It looks like Indiana suddenly has built like a very, very large mosque, but like in a mosque as envisioned by Walt Disney in the 20s, which maybe less racist than Walt Disney would have imagined it. But what I'm saying is that, yeah, I've been around that area a bit. Also, I like Louisville as a town. Like it's got some cool stuff.
Beautiful,
it's
man.
So
like,
beautiful,
look,
man.
My wife and I are always so upset when we go to these other little Midwest towns. And yeah, we love St. Louis, but goddamn, man, St. Louis looks rough. Like there's no angle that you drive into St. Louis where you're just like, wow. Like you get that if you're coming from Illinois, you get the arch and everything, but then you're immediately surrounded by like fucking burned out buildings.
I mean, like it was funny because I went to go see my friend up in Barnet when I was in London. And I messaged him and he was like, yeah, you should just come over. And I was already on a bus. So there would have been a faster way. But I was like, well, if I just stay on this bus, there's a place where I can pick up the train. So I did that. And that took me from basically Whitechapel all the way up past through Hackney, Dalston, up to Finchley Park, through Golders Green, that whole area. One part of it is extremely Hasidic. And it was interesting because it did remind me a lot of Central Brooklyn in that regard. It was like, all the buildings also look like shit here. And there's chain link fences and a million minivans. But what I was going to say was there's parts of London that most of London looks like shit. It's just, I mean, not trying to be a hater about it. Like most buildings in Britain look like shit, but I will say this much. When you sent me some videos, like the thing about the cops, like, you know, claiming they hit a dog or whatever, when they just crashed their car into the bar and then like assaulted
into the
people.
Gay bar, yeah.
I saw all the footage and I was like, oh, I'm being a little too hard in the United Kingdom. I forgot how Midwest and Mid-Atlantic coast cities in America like have all those like 1800s buildings that just look like fucking dog shit. Like those would be like abandoned buildings about to be demolished in Britain level of bad. Whereas like I'll be fair, most buildings in Britain look like shit and look like they're falling apart, but nowhere near as bad as that. So yeah, I'd forgotten. Yeah, I mean like. Also, Louisville's got some areas that are very much neglected by the state, but
sure.
I'm speaking on this like almost 20 years ago level, but like Bardstown Road, there is some really nice stuff out there. Like I really enjoyed it. Like 4th Street Live can fuck itself. I don't want to go get drunk in a mall, but like Bardstown Road has some really cool bars and clubs, like restaurants. Also, like, I mean, I'd probably get bored because it's a small city, but I mean, I would 100% pick Louisville over Indianapolis.
Yeah, Louisville, beautiful city. We didn't get to spend too much time in there, unfortunately, because we were there for a dance competition, and like my daughter danced multiple dances, and by the time you're done, it's just like no, let's just go back to the hotel. We all went back to the hotel and took a nap. So we haven't really got to experience Louisville properly, but I will say we love going down to Memphis, and Memphis is very much like St. Louis, except for like...
You're not fucking kidding. Jesus Christ, dude. Memphis is wonderful, but Jesus, Memphis, talk about neglected by the state. There's parts of Memphis where like, have they cut the power off like a decade ago? Like it's North Memphis has some, and it's not the people's fault there. It's like the state just is like, we want to kill everyone who lives here, but Jesus, Memphis is rough.
Yeah, no, North St. Louis isn't doing so hot after it got hit by a tornado too. But yeah, Memphis doesn't, I don't know. St. Louis is just like a city that is so like the racism is so deeply ingrained in it that every time you go to any other city, you're just like, you guys are nice to each other here. This is weird.
You're also, but wait, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily point to Louisville or Memphis as examples of where it's better, quite frankly.
I'm just saying.
Maybe, okay. If people are nicer, I can't. That's the thing I can't dispute. But in terms of like, I could point to. I mean, the whole thing with Breonna Taylor happened in Louisville. Like,
yeah, Again, not saying that these places don't have their problems. I'm just saying that maybe it's a little bit of grass is greener on the other side, where you visit these other cities and you're like, well, I haven't been reading about how this police department sucks for the last 25 years. So maybe you feel a little bit different. And then, somebody from Memphis is like, well, here's our million articles about how the Memphis PD also sucks ass.
Yeah, but also I'd say too that, I mean, Memphis and Louisville have... It doesn't. My experience in Memphis is relatively limited. I've got more experience in Louisville. The thing about it is, you have the same problem. Like, what is it, Delmar Boulevard in St. Louis, where it's just like, here's the line where things are nice and maintained on one side, and then basically like left to fend for themselves on the other. I would say St. Louis is interesting because it's got like the fucking like recursive, or what's the right word here? The sort of like Fibonacci spiral of like, and then here's another apartheid block versus nice block, and then it's just like everywhere it's just these little exclaves and enclaves of like
block.
Yeah, and you'll have one area like the area on Washington, St. Louis, where it looks like the mansions in Newport, Rhode Island, and then like half a mile north of that, it looks like that part of Baltimore you go through on the Northeast Regional, where you're like half the buildings don't have roofs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I would say with Louisville, like they absolutely did the thing that a lot of American cities did, where they just like, they put a freeway through the black area and more or less made it almost impossible to easily get from there to other parts of the city.
We got that. Highway 55.
Yeah, when we had they what is it, I-65 through Indianapolis, but then they at least named that segment after Kenneth Babyface Williams. So, it was like, we'll name it after a famous black guy from Indiana, but we'll still completely destroy the city. I would say too, the reason I never flew into Louisville instead of Indianapolis when I'd go see my parents, because they lived about like equidistant from the two, is that if you fly into Louisville, you have to deal with crossing the river, and the bridge traffic can be insane. Like I've been held up for 90 minutes getting across the river if there's an accident or something. And then the roads that get you to where my parents lived in Lawrence County, like it's just lower speed limit than it would have been to get off, Indianapolis, the new airport's very close to the 37, 67 exits off 465. And then you just go state road where you can go, I think like 65 or 70 now. And then you basically all the way to where you turn off to where they lived in Bedford. They don't live in Bedford anymore, so I can be a little more forthcoming about address. Not that I'm worried about people stalking me, but now they live in Minneapolis, and I've actually never been to where they live in Minneapolis, so I don't even know. I couldn't even unintentionally dox my parents.
Yeah. So we did Santa Claus. We stopped off at a restaurant. Turns out that restaurant is run by a tap house that is on the Abbey grounds. I really want to go back out there and visit the Abbey, because it's a being somebody who was raised on Redwall, and Abbey, it just has a fascination to me.
Do you have anthropomorphic woodland creatures? Do they have feasts?
Yeah. So are there nut brown ale and acorn cream tarts here?
Strawberry cordial.
Yeah. Some tarts, perhaps some earthland tarts. The moles bring their deeper never pie. The otters will bring their hot root soup.
Does anyone yell Eulalia from time to time?
Well, I haven't been to visit yet. So the monks there, they do woodworking. There's like 79 dudes that live there. And as I get older, I start to appreciate just like I could get behind that. Just like, what if you just lived in a giant castle with a bunch of other guys and just like did woodworking, made music, took photos? Like they're all hippies. Like that's all these monastic lifestyles. It's just like, let's all hang out. They're getting closer to God, but also like we're going to make art while we're here. We're going to be inspired by these things.
But like, they probably don't eat out of the big communal lentil bowl of food not bomb soup, which I'm stealing a line from Dan Beckner, who described living in a squat house in Vancouver in the 90s, and the communal lentils is a common thing. So I bet the monks have better food.
They probably do. And the monks have a tap house. I had a Raising Lazarus IPA when I was at the Santa Claus brew house. So it's a nice little town. Hoping to go back. We also went to Marengo Cave. I don't know if you've been. You've been to a show cave? You do caves? You go down to the big hole in the ground?
Yes, I have, but it was a long time ago. I actually stopped there. I went with a friend of mine in 7th grade with his family on spring break to Orlando, and we stopped there on the way to see the caves. So I have been to Marengo Cave. Yeah, I recall that.
Okay, Marengo Cave is it's an all right little show cave. Do you have caves out there in Switzerland? I mean, I know they're in France, right?
Yes, there are. I haven't gone to any yet, but yes, there absolutely are. I mean, you've got the I obviously like groundwater stuff, a lot of the cave and then glacier stuff. A lot of the things with caves here too is like in some cases they're actually like Neolithic dwelling sites where they've done archaeology. They found like cave paintings and things. Where we are is not like, there are mountains. Like in an American sense, you would be like, wow, you're surrounded by mountains, but this is like one of the least mountainous parts of Switzerland, just because like at least what's in the immediate vicinity of Geneva, it's kind of like a big bowl, and then you have the lake. But yeah, there's caves all over. I mean, certainly if you get into the more alpine cantons, it's Yeah, everywhere.
Do they have show caves where you can, like, I know they have the places for archaeological digs, but do they, because like here in America, for those of you who are not, because like you can't build a cave in Florida, right? So you'd have to come and visit one. But, you know, these caves are very much like kind of roadside attractions where somebody has bought a cave and they've put some stairs in there and put lights in there and they have guides and everything like that.
I don't think they do, because I think that they would probably, the equivalent of that would be like in the German part, a guest house, or in the French part, like a chalet. Like they wouldn't have the structure itself be in the cave, but also just bear in mind, like the climate here, and also the fact that up until very recently, I mean, there was recently a village that got flooded by a glacier mudslide, and that used to be a lot more common throughout the country because like their glaciers used to be a lot further extended here, and up until like, you know, into the early modern period in European history, the glaciers were actually expanding and just like wiping villages off the map. So I think that the idea of I'm kind of speaking off the cuff here, but I have never heard of it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I don't think you have the kind of like highway exit roadside attraction kind of show cave thing, which I do recall from Indiana a little bit. Obviously, Indiana, like going limestone caving is I've done it plenty of times in high school or in college. In New Mexico, I went to Carlsbad Caverns because that's obviously a great big one too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because we lived, I mean, Carlsbad was a long ass drive from where we lived, but my mom and my brother and I went down there one time, like right before the end of summer vacation before 5th grade. So I've done a little of it, but I mean, I know that like the Ohio Valley limestone caves are a much different thing. And there's so many of them. You know, there's always like the high school makeout cave and the high school drinking cave and the like 80s graffiti fucking old Budweiser cans with the pull tabs cave. Like that's everywhere. Southern Indiana and Northern Kentucky have almost identical ecosystems. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's why Kentucky is considered the cave state, but there's not only is there Marengo, but there's Indiana Caverns, which we went to last time we went to Louisville and back. And it's all along that same kind of latitude. And I did note, like, while we were driving through Southern Indiana, like the entire way across Illinois is flat and boring. But once you hit Southern Indiana, you're in that like Hoosier National Forest down there.
Yeah.
Like Indiana doesn't have mountains, but they have hills.
Yes.
And the hills are very close to the highway. So you get this like, you almost get this feeling of like you're driving through the Ozarks, but like everything is much closer.
Have you ever driven to like southeastern Ohio, like near the border with West Virginia? Because like when you start getting in towards...
That's Appalachian, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Whereas like, okay, we think of Ohio, you think of like Dayton and Cleveland and Toledo, and like they're just identical to Indiana but and central and southern Illinois, but shittier somehow. You're just flat, windswept, cornfield, so on and so forth. But like that area near the West Virginia border, like it's like it's not quite mountainous either, but it's way more, it's hillier to the point of becoming mountainous in a way that I can't think of anywhere in southern Indiana that resembles it. But like southern Indiana it's a far different environment than where I grew. Where I grew up in central Indiana is just flat everywhere. There are no hills to speak of. Like and Crown Hill Cemetery is the highest point of Indianapolis, and it is not that high. It's like 200 feet above the regular elevation. Like it's flat, completely flat. Whereas like everywhere in southern Indiana is like hill draw, creek, bridge over creek, so on and so forth. And then, you know, getting to the Ohio River is, you know, you absolutely do feel that kind of like sort of drainage basin slope in a way.
Well, that's because there was, and we have this in Missouri too, because northern Missouri is all of our farmland, and southern Missouri is the Ozark. You can't farm anything down there. So and that's all like ancient ice sheet that came down and kind of was right along the midline of Missouri, Illinois, Kansas. So that's why a lot of places are flat, and then you hit like you hit a line, and all of a sudden like you can see where you hit the glacier line. Yeah, and suddenly there's a bunch of mountains and stuff, and all that stuff, all that like. That's all really great farmland, but that glacier did not come down and flatten out the Ozarks, so we still have those down there.
Northern Missouri, basically Iowa. Southern Missouri is the setting of where the red fern grows for a reason. Yeah,
or Missouri Bone. We don't have a lot of movies set in Missouri that are happy. We've got that one, and I know we've got the 3 Billboards in Edding, Missouri.
What other movies are set in Missouri? I'm trying to think of. You're right.
There was the Lampoon's Vacation visited East St. Louis. That kind of counts. That's Illinois, technically.
I bet that wasn't racist at all.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
I still find it very funny that one of the worst movies I've ever seen, even as an 11-year-old, I could tell it was bad, is National Lampoon's Senior Trip. Do you recall that?
I don't. Did that have Chevy Chase in it? Or was that one of
it
those?
came out in 1996.
Okay, yeah. The National Lampoon franchise, when they were just like plugging that name onto whatever direct-to-DVD titty movie that they were making.
The main character is your sort of archetype 90s, hair parted down the middle, wearing plaid, sort of stoner burnout smartass character, played by a very young Jeremy Renner.
Oh,
it is very interesting to watch it now. Yeah, I think it's his. If it's not his first movie, it's one of his earliest roles. It sucks. It's a terrible movie. There's a whole plot device that's insanely racist. There's a guy. I don't think it's Ethan Suplee, but it's sort of like the Ethan Suplee fucking analog, like overweight kind of moron character who wants to have sex with a blonde haired from China, and then he actually does meet what he is looking for, which is apparently a blonde-haired Japanese girl from China. I mean, and that's what passed for a joke in 90s movies.
Sure. I mean, I remember Revenge of the Nerds. I remember loving that movie, and then
you go back and watch it, and you're like, what? That's just rape.
There's a lot of rape happened. There's a lot of that, and like passing out nude pictures of one of the girls.
It's like, isn't it funny? We did revenge porn, and also like a guy, I mean, it meets the legal threshold for rape. He pretends to be this person's boyfriend in costume so he can have sex with her. And then she realizes it's him, but she's like, oh, but you're so much better at sex than my boyfriend. And so it's okay. Like, yeah, it's, fuck me, man. It was so horrible.
Wait, holy shit, there's so many National Lampoon movies.
Yeah, I've only seen...
Animal House was a Lampoon. Animal House, which does that... I don't think that holds up either. There's some kind of questionable things happening in there.
I haven't seen it in so long, but yeah, I don't think it would. I mean, I saw it when I was in college, and I remember being like, this sucks. But yeah. I was a pretentious asshole, obviously. Everyone knows that. That being said, though, I mean, I also fucking hated you and me and everyone we know. So, you know what? I was an ecumenical hater when it came to movies that really haven't aged well.
Which National Lampoon movie did you talk about?
Senior Trip. Should be 95 or 96 with
Senior Trip. Here we go. Yeah, that's before the Van Wilder, before they 7 beers ago, before they unleashed Ryan Reynolds on all of us.
I mean, yeah, Van Wilder is also a film that
it's got Tommy Chong in it. Hell yeah.
we loved, but I mean, to be honest with you, the Cheech and Chong movies have held up better than a lot of these.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I will say that the thing I like about the weird cult movies from the 80s is that sometimes they can just go in directions that films would just never be allowed to now, because like it's just so dumb. You're like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, I don't care. Like, maybe the test audience likes it, maybe they don't, but like this movie makes absolutely no sense. You could just get away with that more. And I don't know if you've ever seen Nice Dreams.
That sounds familiar.
It's a Cheech and Chong movie where they drive around in an ice cream cart and it says Nice Dreams instead of ice cream, and they sell push-up pops that are weed. And then there's this police inspector who wants to bust them, and he like speaks in rhyming couplets, and I can't remember them verbatim, but there was something to the effect of like, you know, what better way to curb then greed than capturing them and stealing their weed and stuff like that. Like, and then, but they have this weed that turns you into an iguana if you smoke it. He winds up stealing their weed and smoking it, and then they come into the office like to get like interrogated. He's just an iguana. It's so fucking dumb, man.
Yeah, Cheech and Chong were really doing some high art.
I mean, like, Still Smoking has like the weird wrestling competition that goes on forever, where like there's a guy like international masturbation expert or champion named Harry Palms. Like there's just it's so fucking like it really genuinely is. It's not even movies for stoners. It's like a movie for like you've smoked a joint after drinking 12 beers. Like it's really doesn't make any sense at all.
There's a National Lampoon Presents Jake's Booty Call that came out in 2003. It's an animated movie. I can't imagine, like, look, I'm not going to count all of them, but there's like 40 National Lampoon adjacent movies. And to sit down and watch a animated version, because I mean, look, part of this, we do have a tradition. We always watch Christmas Vacation every year at Christmas, because it is one of those Chevy Chase movies that does still hold up. That's not like grossly racist in any ways. But there's a lot of these fucking movies that I've never heard of, and I don't know who is. Transylmania, which is A shirtless vampire, it looks like.
I haven't watched a movie because I wanted to in so long, and I think the reason is because we don't have like a setup here at our apartment that would make watching a movie like a recreational activity. That is a thing we want to change, but like I don't mind not having a TV. What I'm hoping to do is eventually get an office space and transport what I've currently got, which is like a monitor setup here, and then we'll just get like one big monitor, but one that can be on a pedestal stand, and then we can also just move it and take it into the living room and set it up and watch movies at night if we want to once my daughter's asleep, and then put it back when we're done. But until then, basically, we really like the layout of the living room, but for us to get a TV where you could actually see would have to be massively sized or put in a really awkward way, like on a mount. And I kind of like the peacefulness of what we got right now. So the plan is basically to, we'll figure something out later. But the one drawback is I don't want to sit in my office chair in my workspace and watch a movie. And I hate, I don't know, man, I just spent too many times in fucking barracks and, bivouac sites and stuff. I really hate watching movies on my laptop.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Maybe I'm just too much of a hater. I'm actually cutting myself off from cultural input because I'm too much of a hater.
Look, I have a TV and I have a setup where I can comfortably watch a movie, and I don't watch movies because finding a 2.5 hour peaceful block without interruptions just doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I got something for you, brother. I got something big in my life. Today, before we recorded, I got on my bike and I rode it down to the office for the local thing for like early childhood education and handed in our signed contract because my daughter is starting fucking full-time daycare in August.
Hey,
5 days a week. I am so excited. And we did parents' night. It's amazing. I mean, I'm gonna have to be there for the settling in day because like they can accommodate stuff for Cynthia like on the phone in English, but like it's all in French. So I mean, it's just gonna be easier if I'm there. So it's Joe's getting married, and then I'm gonna not drink at the wedding, hopefully, and then get up the next day and fly back from Venice to Geneva. And Monday morning, she starts nursery.
Right on.
And I'm going to be sitting in the room doing parents settling in.
I forget, but you guys are going to Venice for Joe's wedding, right?
I'm just going to go solo because like with the stuff with nursery things, like it's just the timing, having to really quickly turn around and get on. It's not an easy route to get to. Like I can fly from here to Zurich or take the train from here to Zurich and then take a direct flight to Venice. But like Venice's airport doesn't have a ton of direct flights. And there's no direct flight from Geneva. There is a direct train, but it's like 11 hours and it leaves at 5:45 in the morning. So I'm just going to fly. I hate flying. Yeah. I have fucking flying from getting back from London to Geneva. I had to leave the studio at 4 to get to the airport before 6 to check in to fly at 8, and then flew and landed at like 10:30, and then didn't get out of customs and getting baggage collection until almost 11, and then got on the bus and didn't get home till like 11:30 because I really didn't want to deal with paying for a fucking cab again. I was just like, you know what? I the good news is most people don't take the bus to get to and from the airport because like it's not very beginner friendly, but it's actually it not only is it really convenient, but like it's like maybe 15 minutes to where I live. So I just did that. And so flying is so annoying and trains are so much better. But like similarly, I was considering, because flights were so expensive to London, taking Eurostar, even though I hate it because of it's a whole story. And while I was on the app looking at tickets, the prices tripled.
Jesus.
And the problem with Eurostar is really like, I don't want to be a hater because I realize, look, all right, I understand that the United States has such poor like intercity train transportation outside of a very narrow corridor. And even in that corridor, the only train that is in any way comparable in terms of reliability and speed is the Acela. And the Acela is slower than British regional trains. And Britain's not particularly well known for having good trains. Here's the problem. Getting to the United Kingdom on Eurostar is as annoying as flying because of customs checks and the kind of holding pens they put you in and the early arrival you have to do beforehand. And it's like 3 times as expensive. So it is better for the environment, but it's so annoying. And because Eurostar has been not making a lot of money as a company for so long, the trains are in pretty bad shape. Like the Acela is way nicer in terms of like its like general level of cleanliness and functionality. Everything else, train, great. If I want to go to Paris, I'm not going to fly. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes from here, and I literally take a bus 15 minutes and just walk up on the platform. I don't have to show my passport. Train shows up, I get on it, and then like less than 3 hours later, I'm in Paris. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But getting from Paris to London is about the same amount of time. The problem is you have to show up. It's a different station than the one that I would arrive in. So you have to take the Paris Metro or the RER to get there. You have to show up at least at minimum 60 minutes early, but they recommend 90 minutes early. In London, it's minimum 90 minutes early. Wait in line, go through passport control, ticket control, x-ray, security scanners, everything. And then you get put in this tiny ass little holding pen where there's nowhere to sit and it's hot and there's basically no stores and the bathrooms don't work most of the time to wait on your train, which they fucking, troop you onto when it's time to go. So it's like flying. It's like taking all the annoying things about flying, and it's way more expensive than a normal train.
Slower.
And it's slower than flying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you can be like, yes, I did the environmentally responsible thing, which you should. But here's the thing, right? I can't fault anybody for not doing this, because like it's so much more annoying. However, once you're in Schengen, which is the sort of passport, it's like the customs common market. You don't have to basically if you have a visa or you have a passport from one of those countries, you can travel anywhere. They call the common travel area, I think. Or no, that's another one. God, I fucking hate these acronyms. So long story short, I don't want to fly. I hate flying, but it's like a 45-minute flight from here to Zurich. And then I think it's like a 2-hour flight or an hour and a half flight from maybe even less than that from Zurich to Venice. It might be less because it's not that far, or 11, 12 hours each way on the train. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it because there is no train that runs from St. Louis to Venice, and other reasons that I can't make it. But I hope you guys managed to beat out Jeff Bezos. Didn't he just had his wedding in Venice, I think?
Maybe he did. I mean, I'm not getting married, obviously.
Right.
I'm not marrying Joe, although that would be very funny.
You can, though, and that's what's important. The two of you can you two can find podcast love.
I'm already married, though.
Yeah,
so
you are also married.
Divorce. I'm not going to.
That part's illegal.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't legalized podcast bigamy yet. We just have to have everyone has to have weird polycules that then cause everyone to fight.
No podcast cules here.
No, well, I mean, mercifully, that's one kind of podcast drama I'm not worried about having.
Oh God. Isn't that nice? There's a lot of problems that you run into being a podcaster, but not having everybody fuck each other is really
I mean, it's
nice.
not like that doesn't happen elsewhere, but it just hasn't happened for us, so that's really good. I actually found out recently that it's a horror story, and I really don't want to make light of it, but I don't know if maybe I told you before that the drummer for the Canadian indie band, the New Pornographers, was arrested for taking creep shots of little kids in a bathroom in McDonald's. And possession of child pornography. He immediately got fired from the band, but he wasn't the original drummer. He wasn't the one who had performed on like the albums that I think they're probably the ones that are the highest regarded, the ones from the 2000s.
Right.
But that guy apparently actually got fired from the band because he had hooked up with the girlfriend of one of the other members. So he had gone full Fleetwood Mac, and they were like, nope, we're not having this. And it's like,
we're not doing it. We're not gonna have fights in the middle of a performance.
I mean,
sing fights at each other.
We're not gonna write angry songs about each other, not back and forth. That are like equal levels of like hit singles. Being like, I fuck you and I don't want to date you, but I'm also mad you're dating someone else. Like,
yeah.
I really love 70s and 80s Fleetwood Mac, and particularly the ones that you're gonna be like, oh yeah, big surprise. Nate likes the album Tusk, but it's really, really good. But like, so much of it is just literally that. It's
just petty bullshit. Just being mad about fucking.
Lindsey Buckingham is mad at whatever cocaine is making him mad at, and mad at Stevie Nicks for being over him. Stevie Nicks is mad and is not over him and is writing songs about that. Christine McVie is like hooking up with a different member of the touring crew and being like, I'm absolutely in love with you. Like, it's and then like her ex-husband is the bassist in the band.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that sounds like an absolute disaster. And that's one of those things where either the band is going to break up or they're going to become Fleetwood Mac.
And then Mick Fleetwood is periodically hooking up with other members of the band's wives and or girlfriends and or like their managers, spouses. Like, it's so messy. It's so insanely messy. But they made some really amazing music, man.
And that's what's important. The emotion behind it. Nate, I appreciate you coming on to talk. I hope it's not too hot for you in your office there. We're getting close to 7 a.m. here, and it is already 80 degrees. I don't know how much that is.
It's about 28. It's about the same here right now. It's how to describe it. It's really humid, but it's not that bad in here because it's cloudy outside and the sun. Sun's not shining and it's nowhere near as hot. But like yesterday, they were predicting it was going to be like 96-ish, but it wound up being about 93, 94. But I think tomorrow and definitely over the weekend, it's supposed to get 96, 97 here, which is shit. There's no getting around it. I mean, like we have a like a portable, one of those like wheel in, hook up a duct into the window air conditioners, but that can only really cool down one room. I mean,
and it barely does that. Like I have one in my office and I have to have it like blowing directly on me.
Yeah, I also find that like I'm going to see if I can get this tent thing hooked up to it to hopefully help. But one of the things I found also is that like its ability to determine what the temperature in the room is really poor, and so it always thinks it's hotter than it is, so it just keeps blowing cold forever. So like you have to turn it off because it's going to waste so much energy and make that room like not uncomfortably cold but colder than you want. But then also, you know what I mean, like, so we'll see. But I mean, like I'm just glad we have it, because having a little recovery room is nice when it's you're just sweating bullets. But do we have time for Ask a Dad, Francis, or do you need to run?
I kind of need to run. It's been super busy, but I'm gonna get. I'll tell you what, we'll do another full Ask a Dad episode. Probably next month. We'll solicit some questions. If you have questions, you can always ask them if you're a Patreon subscriber. Even if you're not giving us money, you can send us Patreon messages. And of course, the Discord, I'll ask in there too. But YouTube, we put stuff up on YouTube. We got a lot of places where you can comment, so you can always, if you've got a question that you need your dads to answer, please let us know.
All right. Well, everyone, if I can request your good vibes and hopes, because I have to take a test so I can renew my visa. The level of French I have to prove is far, far below what I believe my assessed level of French is, but I still have to pass the test in whatever weird format they want. That's coming up not too long from now. So I
hope they don't ask you, do you know caving? Like, what's a stalactite in French?
Probably stalactite, because it's literally probably the same.
Stalactite and stalagmite?
Stalagmite. I don't know. Like, I'll check, but like oftentimes words like that are obviously like whatever the etymology is, it's the exact same. You want a weird one though? Looking up words in one of my daughter's like animal books, it's only in French. Seahorse is hippocampe. So like HIPPOCAMPE.
Okay.
That's a weird one.
Is that like, I mean, does that take from anything? Because ours is seahorse because it kind of looks like horse.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's literally seahorse or something.
Seahorse in French.
I'm not 100% sure, but it's taking, but not from French, I believe from Latin, but I'm not sure. Similarly, hummingbird is a colibri, or it is a oiseau mouche or fly bird. So like insect.
Isn't that what they all do?
Well, like insect fly bird.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Languages always make sense. But anyway, Francis, it's wonderful speaking with you, and thank you out there in listener land. Appreciate you tolerating my absences as well, and we will be back very soon.
Yep, we will talk to you all next week.
Have a good one.